What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma, and today I wanted to self-indulge a little bit and talk about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and give you guys my thoughts on the game so far. Whether it's something you should eventually pick up, or based on this video's title, if it's bad or the worst Borderlands game ever. Putting the bait aside for a moment, no, Wonderlands is absolutely not the worst Borderlands game ever. In fact, I actually think it's better than the pre-sequel, and I've personally enjoyed it more than Borderlands 3. However, much to what I would suspect would be to Gearbox's dismay, I don't think it's better than Borderlands 2, even though it's improved over Borderlands 2 in many ways. That said, I think it's important for you to understand where I'm coming from here. I describe myself as a Borderlands 2 veteran, as that's where I started with the series. I've played through Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, Borderlands the pre-sequel, most of Borderlands 3, although I didn't do all of the DLC, and of course now Wonderlands. And yes, I did play Tales from the Borderlands as well. I'm also pretty involved with the Borderlands community, so I'm pretty biased. Obviously, I'm more likely to like this game more than someone that's more neutral. Then again, I suspect if you like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, you're going to be pretty biased towards liking the Elden Ring. And in a sense, we can objectively agree that Demon Souls was the best game ever made. That said, the advantage of my bias is that I probably know more about this series' history and the community surrounding these types of games than some more generic and less invested reviewer, who will likely just say, oh well, it's just a Borderlands 3 DLC, when's Borderlands 4 coming out? So, if you are looking for a more fan/enthusiast type perspective, then you've come to the right place. But without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss what I like and just go from there. Wonderlands, I think, fulfills the dream of what it would be like to play a Borderlands game that is, in terms of its content, like the material that inspired it. But you may be wondering, what do I mean by that word salad? Well, if you ever wondered what it would be like to play Diablo with guns as an FPS, Wonderlands, I think, is much closer to that than the normal Borderlands games are. This is a fantasy game rather than a post-apocalyptic wasteland type experience. And of course, the upside to that is that this game is much more unique and interesting when contrasted with the previous titles. In a sense, it's a lot like Borderlands 2's Assault on Dragonkeep, which obviously inspired Wonderlands, as well as the pre-sequel's Claptastic Voyage expansion, in that the premise is novel enough to be entertaining in and of itself. The Borderlands DNA is still there, as spells are grenades and class mods are armors. However, many features the community wanted in previous games are now included and or expanded upon. Something like lootable melee weapons with the uniques and legendaries having their own unique properties, or Dragonkeep's promise of spell-type grenades being expanded into literal spells that can do everything from buff the player's damage to casting Fireball, are great examples. It's also pretty neat this time around that you can actually create your own vaults, Fate Maker, and pick their class and what have you. You're not limited to the template of a particular Vault Hunter whatsoever this time around, which is a nice change of pace. When combined with a fantasy story that doesn't take itself overly seriously and constantly breaks the fourth wall, you're going to have a good time. One of the best things about this game as well is just some of the environments. The ones that are the most striking to me are the pirate/sea themed environments. I have to admit that the first time I reached Wartooth Shallows, I got hit with instant Captain Scarlet and her pirate's booty nostalgia. Obviously, it's not one-to-one, but I remember being really blown away the first time I saw it. Crackmast Cove also gives off the Captain Scarlet vibes too, and when these are combined with other places like Tangledrift, Mount Craw, Sungfang Oasis, and Karnok's Wall, there's no shortage of stimulating environments to explore. And of course, unique enemies to take down, ranging from pirates to skeletons to serpent women to crabs to sharks and all sorts of other weird stuff. I also really like how when compared to previous Borderlands games, enemy and loot levels scale with the player's level now. While you will still need to be a certain level to be effective in newer areas you unlock, being able to go back to the beginning of the game or to some of the earlier game areas and find that all of the enemies match your level is really nice. This was something that was annoying about some of the previous games because you always had to beat the game first before enemies would properly scale. Now, everything scales to your current level, and that makes going back and picking up side quests much more convenient since you don't have to worry about completing a level 13 side quest at, say, level 30. There's also the new Chaos mode, which I prefer to Borderlands 3's Mayhem mode and even Borderlands 2's overpowered levels. I think it combines the best of both in the sense where you get the stronger enemies that the overpowered levels provided, the difficulty slider from Mayhem mode, while also avoiding some of the random stat impairment rolls from Mayhem mode. Granted, the trials still contain random impairments, however, where I didn't like this much in 3, I like it in Wonderlands, especially since you can usually avoid some of the obnoxious impairments while doing a Chaos trial. To go along with Chaos mode, I like how overpowered gear levels are a lot more simplified now. At the time of making this video, there is simply chaotic and volatile versions of all existing gear that feature boosted damage. This I think beats having to farm for new liquid cooling every few Chaos levels like you would have had to have done in previous games. Also, the chaotic variants of the better legendaries are usually strong enough that you won't have to worry too much if you don't get a volatile variant. In general, having a more tier-based system as opposed to a hard level system for a lot of this new gear is better in my opinion. Granted, assuming there is a new level cap, you'll have to refarm everything again. However, this time you have the advantage of being able to just reach the new level cap and find the tier you want, as opposed to getting into the minutia of getting to max level and then getting the max overpowered level equipment. The only real downside to Chaos mode is how repetitive it can become. As you grind up to Chaos level 20, you start to recognize a lot of the same encounter maps over and over. While seeing these areas is cool the first couple times, after a while it can definitely get monotonous. Going to the same map with the same enemy type and completing the encounter at Chaos level 10 that you took on at Chaos level 8 or 6 definitely does get kind of old. I wish there was a little more variety here, or at least some way to escape what are largely confined small maps. Perhaps that will come with the season pass, but we'll just have to wait and see. Something else I don't like is the inability to reset your story playthrough, let alone have the option to play through the story again to get level updated gear and equipment. There's not any true Vault Hunter mode or playthrough 2 now, and I think that's a bummer because one of the best parts of the second playthrough was the ability to reacquire some of the cool weapons you discovered as you completed side quests. Off the top of my head, I'd like to try a level 40 volatile 8-piece of Jealousy, or even a level 40 volatile Pookie's Chew Toy pistol. Perhaps Gearbox plans on adding these features back through updates, but for the time being, if you want these things you have to deliberately avoid side quests, which makes the prospect of simply getting to level 40 much more difficult, let alone the Chaos levels. Speaking of gear, I do think Wonderlands does have this kind of Borderlands 3-ism, in which the legendaries have become the primary focus. Maybe I just haven't experimented with every build or gear combination yet, and I'm speaking from a position of ignorance, but I miss the ability to simply complete a quest and get blown away by something really exceptional. Using Borderlands 2 as a reference, think of something like the Sandhawk, Swordsplosion, or Kitten. These items were amazing, and you just kind of stumbled upon them. To be fair, Borderlands 2 I guess devolves into an Unkempt Herald, B-Shield, or similar legendary bonanza. It's just looking at my equipment list as I complete the Chaos Trials, almost everything I'm using is a legendary. There are no uniques, very few non-uniques, and you get the idea. Again, maybe I just haven't explored everything yet, but I wish there was more variety like in the older games. It just seems like now you have to have legendaries, otherwise you can't get that far. I'm also mystified by some of the design choices. A great example of this would be the default controller layouts. While I'm an old curmudgeon and don't like the post-Borderlands 3 default control scheme, I was pleased that Gearbox included the classic scheme. The only thing is, I come to find out that in its default mode, you can't switch weapons on a per-slot basis. It's a really good thing that Gearbox allows you to map the inputs because having to press down on the D-pad to equip my first slot gun hurts my brain. What a strange way to configure things, though maybe that's just a boomerism of mine. To go along with design choices, as I was making this video, I discovered that there are actually multiple target dummies in Brighthoof. The idea behind these being that you can test your equipment and skill synergy like the Borderlands 2 days. The only thing is, and as far as I'm aware, there's no mention in the game anywhere that this is a feature you can take advantage of. It's not nearly as bad as Dark Souls 1's Rusted Iron Ring, but it's unfortunate that it got included, but there's not really any attention brought to it. The reason why I think Borderlands 2's target dummy was so ingenious is because it was introduced to you through a side quest. That way you always knew it was there and it was a tool you could use to figure stuff out. That said, Wonderlands does allow you to melee the target dummies without having to perform an out-of-bound glitch, so that's a massive improvement. Probably my final complaint, and this is one that may get me into some trouble, but it's the Epic Store exclusivity on PC. This I think is less of an issue with Gearbox or anybody that worked on the game, but the PC version constantly crashes on startup due to some weird issue with the Epic launcher. It's funny because when it works, the game runs great. It's just that you have to contend with this finicky launcher. I guess it's great for developers because Wonderlands is on Unreal Engine, but I miss the Steam days where you could just simply play a game and what DRM there was is not really getting in the way. Again, this is not an issue with the game. I think it's just something weird with the Epic launcher. Let me know in the comments if you've had issues with crashes on PC. I will say though that Wonderlands has been a lot of fun and I do like a lot of the improvements they've made. I'm pretty curious what they're going to do with the DLC and as they update the game. I didn't mention this earlier, but I was pretty hesitant to see how this game was going to turn out when it originally got announced. It's silly, but I did think, why Wonderlands? Why not another Borderlands game? In a way, I'm kind of glad they decided to do something this different while still retaining a lot of the classic DNA and formula the series is known for. It's unfortunate that I don't have footage of this, but I remember one of the first spells I got being this comet or meteor thing that just dramatically smashed into enemies, and I got this deep satisfaction from that. Had they made another Borderlands game, we may not have gotten anything like that, so I'm pretty pleased with how things turned out. Even if I'm making a lot of comparisons to Borderlands 2 and my nostalgia for it. I don't know if this game is better than Borderlands 3, but I do think I'm definitely enjoying it a lot more. So if you like Borderlands and haven't tried this game yet, I'd recommend it so far. And of course, if you're playing the game and enjoying it right now, definitely let everyone know in the comment section below. Otherwise, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you enjoyed this video, definitely be sure to make that like button blue, click the bell to be up to date with me, and as always, and again, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and have a good one.